This is breaking news.
Donald Trump's 2024 campaign fundraising starts slowly. Former president raises about $9.5 million in the 6 weeks after launching his latest White House bid. Former President Donald Trump's campaign started the year with about $6.8 million in cash on hand as he began his third run for the White House, new campaign finance reports show. Mr. Trump, the only declared major party presidential candidate of the 2024 election cycle, raised about $9.5 million in the roughly 6 weeks between the November 15 launch of his campaign and the end of last year, according to the reports filed Tuesday with the Federal Election Commission and a campaign official. The fundraising figure was lower than Mr. Trump's separate post-presidency political operation raised in the 6 weeks ahead of his announcement. During his last campaign, the former president would routinely raise a similar amount in a matter of days. But Mr. Trump's donation haul also came at a traditionally slow period for political fundraising, immediately after a general election and nearly 2 years before the 2024 election. President Biden is expected to make a formal announcement about his re-election plans between early March and early April, at which point he would launch his own campaign fundraising operation separate from the money he has been raising for the Democratic National Committee. Trump spokesman Stephen Chung said the campaign built out a second-to-none operation both on the national level and in early states since announcing, and would run aggressively against Mr. Biden and his fellow Democrats. Other GOP candidates thought to be contemplating presidential bids include former New Jersey Gov. Chris Christie, Florida Gov. Ron DeSantis, former United Nations Ambassador Nikki Haley, former Arkansas Gov. Asa Hutchinson, former Vice President Mike Pence, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, and Virginia Gov. Glenn Youngkin. Of that group, Mr. DeSantis has generated the most buzz and has proved a strong fundraiser, collecting about $200 million in his re-election campaign. He has more than $70 million left, according to a DeSantis aide. The FEC doesn't allow for state campaign funds to be transferred directly to a presidential candidate's campaign, but there are other ways Mr. DeSantis's gubernatorial war chest could be spent in support of a presidential run. For example, Mr. DeSantis could direct the money to a supportive Super PAC before formally announcing his candidacy. The Super PAC could then spend the money to back his presidential bid. Mr. Trump has been a fundraising force for Republicans over the past several years, routinely raising the most money from online donations on the GOP donation platform Winrid. The former president could get a fundraising boost if he returns to Facebook and Instagram. His accounts have been suspended in the wake of the January 6 Capitol riot. Meta Platforms Incorporated, which owns the services, said it will place new restrictions on Mr. Trump, who has 34 million followers on Facebook alone. He was also invited back on Twitter, but has so far stuck to his Truth Social platform. Mr. Trump will also benefit from the moves of a deep-pocketed Super PAC set up to support his presidential bid. The group, Make America Great Again Incorporated, has received tens of millions of dollars in transfers from Mr. Trump's post-presidential fundraising apparatus before he announced his candidacy. That group, which operates separately from the campaign, has been conducting opposition research on some of Mr. Trump's potential GOP rivals, including Mr. DeSantis. The group's latest report showed it had more than $54 million in cash on hand. During the last 6 weeks of the year, Mr. Trump's campaign spent about $800,000, with some of the larger expenditures going toward event and staff costs. That included roughly $68,000 to his Mar-a-Lago club for catering and rent.